Chapter 1500. Her pure white little face was like a slender and elegant little white flower that had suddenly bloomed in this snowstorm, revealing infinite elegance and infinite freshness. The moment she appeared, the entire courtyard suddenly lost its color. Mo Tianji was stunned. He only saw that infinitely pure little face suddenly walk out from the snow and barge into his field of vision. The endless falling snow in the sky also seemed to disappear at the same time. For some reason, a poem appeared in his mind. Before you appeared, the world was beautiful. Even the snowflakes had infinite shapes. When you appeared, everything in the world lost its color. Someone at the side said, "Military advisor Mo, this lady is looking for you." Mo Tianji didn't hear it. The moment Chu Luo entered, she saw a tall young man dressed in white standing under a plum blossom tree. His hair was as black as ink, and his eyes were deep. With his hands behind his back, it was as if he had the whole world in his hands. It was an unfathomable posture. It was a profound posture with infinite confidence. It was as if he was taking a leisurely stroll. She couldn't help but be stunned. "You are Mo Tianji?" Chu Luo asked curiously. "I am Mo Tianji. And you are?" Mo Tianji only felt an inexplicable heat on his face. He hurriedly sorted out his messy thoughts and laughed softly. He quickly calmed down, and the flush on his face disappeared. "I am Chu Luo." Chu Luo tilted her head and asked, "You should know me, right? Has my big brother ever mentioned me to you?" "So you are Chu Luo, little sister Luo." The one who spoke wasn't Mo Tianji, but Ao Xieyun. Duke Xie exclaimed in amazement and said, "I've heard so much about you. Your big brother often mentions your name to the point where we're almost getting calluses on our ears. But after meeting you today, I know that your big brother really doesn't know how to speak. He didn't even say 1/10 of how beautiful you are. He really doesn't know how to use adjectives. His vocabulary is really too poor." Ao Xieyun laughed. "I am Ao Xieyun. Ao as in Ao Xieyun. Xie as in Ao Xieyun. Yun as in Ao Xieyun. Your big brother has mentioned me to you, right?" Chu Luo chuckled. I did. "So, you are that Ao Xieyun who has many wives and concubines, is extremely lecherous, is extremely stingy, and is extremely greedy for money. Yet, you are very cute, and very worthy of being friends with. I have really heard of you. I have often heard of your name and those deeds of yours." Ao Xieyun's radiant smile froze on his face in an instant. Mo Tianji didn't know why, but he felt extremely comfortable at this moment. A feeling of schadenfreude arose in his heart. He laughed and said, That's right. He's that Ao Xieyun who has many wives and concubines, is extremely lecherous, extremely stingy, greedy and petty. Luo, your evaluation of him is right on point. It's too graphic." This time, Mo Tianji deliberately omitted the words very cute and worthy of being friends with. Ao Xieyun's face turned completely green. He said in shame, "What is this? Who would introduce their brothers like that? Wait for the boss to come back. I will definitely settle the score with him. I rarely feel like dying. I am so embarrassed in front of my little sister. My image is completely ruined." Suddenly he said excitedly, "Oh right, what did your big brother say about Mo Tianji? You have a belly full of evil ideas, a belly full of scheming, and a belly full of schemes." Chu Luo tilted her head and thought. Mo Tianji immediately became nervous. "How is he scheming? My big brother said that Mo Tianji is very scary. He eats people without spitting out their bones. He is sinister and vicious. He hides a knife in his smile. Yet he is worthy of being entrusted with a brother's life. He is the most terrifying enemy when he is an enemy, but he is the most reliable brother when he is a friend." Chu Luo said with a smile. This was indeed Chu Yang's accurate evaluation of Mo Tianji. It was the combination of their understanding of each other. Mo Tianji only felt that his entire body was warm and comfortable. Although there were derogatory comments such as very scary. He eats people without spitting out their bones. He is sinister and vicious. He hides a knife in his smile. Mo Tianji was still very satisfied. "I, Mo Tianji, am of course that kind of person. But I will never treat my friends that way." Ao Xieyun clearly felt different, and was very uncomfortable. He said in a strange tone, "You don't know. This guy is not much better than me. Didn't your big brother tell you that Mo Tianji took in concubines before marrying? He is lustful and shameless? Chu Luo wrinkled her nose and said, Mo Tianji does indeed have 2 concubines. But those 2 concubines, if Ao Shiyin was in Mo Tianji's place, I'm afraid they would have been killed long ago. Am I right? Ao Shiyin and Mo Tianji were both stunned. Ao Shiyin said, Did your big brother also say this? Chu Luo smiled slyly. Not entirely. This is the conclusion I came to after my big brother said it. She looked at Ao Shiyin from the corner of her eyes. This is the conclusion I came to after seeing you. Ao Shiyin touched his nose and smiled bitterly. He was completely convinced now. She was a super genius problem girl. Mo Tianji's eyes shone. He had a new evaluation of the girl in front of him. Smart. She could see the problem clearly and hit the nail on the head. Indeed, if it was anyone else, Mo Tianji's 2 so-called concubines would have been killed countless times. Not to mention that they had lived until now and lived a luxurious life. Lure is here? Rui Butong exclaimed in surprise and somersaulted out. When he saw Chu Lure, he was even happier. Ha ha ha. I was sleeping when I heard your voice. I came out to take a look. It was indeed you. Brother Butong. Chu Lure smiled warmly. You still love somersaulting. Rui Butong laughed and came forward affectionately. He was about to hold Chu Lure's hand and invite her in. Suddenly, Mo Tianji took a step forward and stood in front of Rui Butong. He smiled warmly and said, Lure, coming quickly. It's so cold outside. Haha, it's snowing so heavily. Why are you here alone? He turned around and let Chu Lure in. However, he seemed to have intentionally or unintentionally pushed Rui Butong's buttocks outside. The pitiful Rui Butong only showed his face once after he came out. After that, he didn't even get a chance to show his face again. Mo Tianji had already invited Chu Lure into the hall. What's going on? Did Mo Tianji go crazy? Ao Xiaoyin looked at the depressed Wan Renjia and the other 2 and muttered. It was obvious that there were 4 of them. Mo Tianji actually said, Why did you come here alone? He actually chose to ignore the other 3 people behind. Ao Xia and Rui Butong didn't think much about it. They hurriedly went forward to receive them and exchanged names with Wan Renjia and the other 2. When they heard that they were Chu Yang's old acquaintances, everyone became even more affectionate. They chatted and entered the hall. After hearing Chu Lure's intention, Mo Tianji frowned and comforted her. Lure, don't worry. Elder Wu hasn't participated in the battle these few days. If Elder Wu had participated in the battle, we would have immediately received news. We will definitely get the news as soon as possible. Currently, we should be observing the situation. To be honest, a battle of this level might not be able to attract the interest of someone of your master's level. Mo Tianji pondered for a while and said, I think that Elder Wu is most likely with your big brother right now. Chu Lure was surprised. Why do you say that? Mo Tianji said. You also know your master's identity and your big brother's identity. You also know what your master cares about the most. Since your master knows that your big brother has come to the northwest this time, how can he not go and ask clearly? He smiled lightly. Those things are the most important thing in your life. This is your master's greatest obsession. Naturally, he wouldn't lose his composure in front of his disciple and leave you for the time being. This is a logical thing to do. Chu Lure's mind was very clear. She instantly let go of her worries. Mo Tianji's analysis was very logical. She couldn't help but be unconvinced. It was even more similar to Wu Jueqing's character. Chu Lure felt that it made sense. She couldn't help but admire him. Indeed, this should be the case. Why didn't I think of it? Big Brother Mo is amazing. As expected of the master of calculation and manipulation. Mo Tianji smiled warmly. Actually, you should have thought of it too. It's just that those involved can't see clearly. Chapter 1501. Wan Renjia and the other 2 had only interacted with Mo Tianji for a short period of time. Naturally, they had no right to speak. Ao Xiaoyin and Rui Butong understood Mo Tianji very well. They could even say how many hairs he had on his body. But now they were also confused. Just as they were about to ask, Mo Tianji waved his hand and said reservedly, I'm thinking of a strategy to defeat the enemy. Don't disturb me. Keep quiet. Everyone was speechless. Was he really thinking of a strategy to defeat the enemy? It didn't seem like it. It felt a little like that. Of course, Mo Tianji wasn't thinking of any grand strategy to defeat the enemy. Not even a little bit. But he didn't think of anything else. In fact, no one knew what he was thinking. Even he didn't know. At this moment, the master of calculation and manipulation only felt that there were thousands of thoughts in his mind. But they receded like the tide. When he calmed down and wanted to sort out his complicated emotions, he realized that there was nothing in his mind. All his thoughts had disappeared. Such a strange situation had never happened to Mo Tianji in his life. He felt that this situation was very novel. He was very surprised. He even felt a little fearful and expectant. When all his distracting thoughts disappeared, a face appeared clearly in his mind. It was a pretty face that was delicate, smart, and strong. Her eyes were lively, strong, and stubborn. But there was a trace of weakness that made people want to protect her. The owner of this face was so delicate and pitiful. But there was also a pride that didn't rely on anyone. Such a girl was very special. Very special. At least, Mo Tianji had never seen such a girl before. Very special. For the first time, Mo Tianji's heart was filled with gentleness and desire to protect her. This feeling of wanting to protect her. Other than his sister Mo Qingwu, this was the first time it appeared on other girls. It didn't even appear on the two girls, or Xiao Shui in Tianji City. It was just that the feeling was a little different. Towards his sister he cared for her wholeheartedly. He spoiled her and indulged her completely. However, towards this little girl who suddenly appeared, Mo Tianji had a trace of dominance in addition to spoiling and indulging her. Selfish protection. It was just a slight difference, but it was already a completely different result. As Mo Tianji thought about this, a faint sense of perplexity arose in his heart. He even felt a little worried about personal gains and losses. He just stood there in a daze. His entire body was motionless. This was the case for a long time. At first, Ao Xieyun and Rui Butong were still accompanying him. They had to fulfill their duties as bodyguards. Later on, they simply ignored him. The two of them brought out a lot of food and wine, and ate and drank with Wan Renjia and the others to their heart's content. Bodyguards are humans too. They have to eat too. If I can't give you a bodyguard, you won't eat. Besides, we didn't leave. She was eating right in front of you. And she even asked you to catch up with her. Besides, it's true that we're your bodyguards. But, if it weren't for our brotherhood, you wouldn't have been able to afford to hire bodyguards like us. While they were drinking, they called Mo Tianji a few times. However, Mo Tianji, who was in a daze, didn't hear them at all. Everyone only knew that he was considering an infinitely deep and infinitely serious problem. No one dared to rashly disturb him. Even the volume of their voices had been lowered by a lot. According to Ao and Rui, once great trickster Mo thought of a problem, he would definitely not give up if he couldn't think of a solution. Once, he was deliberating on a plan, but couldn't form it after a long time. He didn't sleep for many nights, and was extremely haggard. He also fell into a daze like this. The two brothers kindly served him a bowl of ginseng tea, and asked him to rest for a while. However, they attracted a thunderous scolding, saying that they had disturbed his thinking, and that the two of them had messed up a matter that was clearly about to have a solution. Ao Xieyun and Rui Butong were so angry that they almost burst their bellies. From then on, the two of them didn't ask about Mo Tianji's days anymore. He deserved to die from exhaustion. At most, they would send him some ginseng tea, bird's nest and other nourishing items regularly. They would leave them there, and leave if he wanted to eat them or not. Halfway through drinking, Li Xiongtu also joined in. However, he felt that the cup was too small. It was rare for him to be so happy. He simply hugged a wine jar that was almost half the height of a person, and competed with Ao Xieyun and Rui Butong in drinking. Ao Xieyun and Rui Butong were instantly shocked by this delightful attitude of drinking wine and eating meat. It wasn't that he hadn't hugged a wine jar to drink before, but he really hadn't hugged such a big wine jar to drink before. At this moment, Li Xiongtu's heroic spirit was soaring, and his ambition was soaring. This made Ao Xieyun and Rui Butong's blood boil. How could they be willing to show weakness? They rushed up with reddened eyes, determined to beat this guy down. Rui Butong straightforwardly suggested that since they were going to drink in big mouthfuls, they should seal each other's cultivation before drinking. What kind of alcohol tolerance would it be if they only relied on their cultivation? They must drink to their heart's content today. This suggestion was unanimously approved by everyone. Therefore, even Wan Renjia and the other two brothers sealed their dantian in an instant. Everyone drank, and drank to their heart's content. Chu Luo slept very soundly. When she opened her eyes again, it was already midnight. She could only hear the thunderous snoring outside. Occasionally, there were also some ravings. Just as she opened the door, she was almost knocked over by the smell of alcohol that greeted her. She covered her nose and looked over. She saw that on the steps outside, there were 7 big men lying in a mess. Most of them were familiar faces. The 5 of them were Ao Shiyun, Rui Butong, Wan Renjia, Cheng Duiying and Bao Buhuan. As for the last big and tall charcoal head, she didn't recognize him. All the big men were lying on the ground. Everyone's body was in a rather strange posture. Some were twisted, some were curled up. The strangest one was the charcoal head. His 2 feet were placed high on the steps, but his head was at the bottom of the steps in the snow. Half of his head was already buried in the snow. As he panted, breathed again and breathed again. From time to time, some alcohol would come out of his mouth with a gurgling sound. The area around his head was already sparkling. The alcohol that came out had already been frozen due to the cold, and half of his head was frozen in the snow. Yet, he could still sleep with thunderous snoring. This ability was indeed surprising. As for the other 5 people, their postures were also similar. Anyway, there were all kinds of weird postures. Each of them had their own merits. Chu Luo was really amazed by this. Chu Luo floated up very carefully. She flew over the head of a drunkard and entered the courtyard. She couldn't help but feel a little strange. Where did Mo Tianji go? Ao Shiyun and Rui Butong were drinking here, and they were even drunk. Mo Tianji shouldn't be too far away. Under the plum blossom tree, there was a huge pile of snow that looked like a human figure suddenly shaking. With a whoosh, the snow scattered and revealed a person inside. He was tall and elegant. It was Mo Tianji, who she thought had disappeared. Lore, why are you awake so early? You've been tired out these few days. Why don't you sleep a little longer? Rest well. Chu Luo looked at him with a little surprise. So you're not drunk? She thought to herself, big brothers are really weird. The few over there drank themselves unconscious, but the one in front of me directly buried himself in the snow. Is it easier to think things through by burying oneself in the snow? Yes, I never let myself get drunk. Mo Tianji smiled slightly. This is a very good habit. Chu Luo praised him without hiding anything. I hate drunk people. They stink and are in a daze. They really don't know what they're doing. Yet they still think that they're very manly. My big brother has never been like this. Mo Tianji's eyes lit up. He said, yes, drunk people are really annoying. Chu Luo's eyes lit up. She said, you think so too? The two of them seemed to have found a common topic. So they wantonly talked about the dangers of getting drunk. Mo Tianji quoted from the classics, and quoted from a wide range of sources. So, the matter of a man getting drunk had already risen to the level of being angered by both heaven and man in a short while. Men who get drunk often are unreliable. Men who get drunk often make people feel insecure. Men who get drunk often make mistakes easily. Men who get drunk often are very rude. Men who get drunk often can't do great things. Men who get drunk often have the tendency to hit their wives. They are definitely not ideal partners. Men who get drunk often. Mo Tianji spoke very elegantly and methodically. He chatted happily with Chu Luo. They were getting along better and better. Without leaving a trace, through the matter of getting drunk, he had intentionally or unintentionally degraded Ao Xian and Rui Butong, these 2 good brothers of his. Then, even though he hadn't mentioned a single word about himself from the beginning to the end, he had unknowingly raised his image infinitely. Because I don't get drunk. What a simple, straightforward, and practical reason. But Mo Tianji still made a mistake. A mistake that was quite low level for him. Chu Luo was talking about Chu Yang. My big brother is so good. At first, Mo Tianji listened with a smile. Occasionally, he would agree, praise, and praise, but Chu Luo couldn't stop talking about Chu Yang. That kind of worship for Chu Yang seeped into her bones. That kind of unlimited closeness, that kind of unconditional trust, it was simply worship. He was simply a god. The more Mo Tianji listened, the more sour he felt in his heart. He also didn't know where this sour feeling had come from. Mo Qingwu had said countless good things about Chu Yang in front of him. She had worshipped him and was close to him. However, Mo Tianji didn't feel this sour feeling even though he was angry and unhappy. It was this inexplicable sour feeling that caused him to say almost subconsciously, "Actually, Chu Yang isn't that good. This bastard is also a lecher. He cheated so many women to be loyal to him. He even cheated my sister. He's a beast." Chapter 1502. Mo Tianji knew that he shouldn't have said that. He was already scolding himself in his heart. I've always been able to keep my composure. Why can't I keep my composure today? However, Chu Luo was already indignant. She flew into a rage and looked like she was going to start a fight if they didn't get along. Great trickster Mo, who was usually full of schemes, was instantly at a loss. He hurriedly tried to salvage the situation. I was exaggerating a little just now. Actually, Chu Yang isn't that. Sigh. Even though it's consensual, Chu Yang is also very helpless. Being liked by so many women, I'm just feeling indignant for my sister, who asked me to be her brother. Little sister Luer, you have to understand. You're also her sister, right? As he said that, he sighed deeply. He secretly looked at Chu Luer. Seeing that the little girl was still angry, he gritted his teeth and said against his conscience, "Actually, you can't blame Chu Yang for being a beast. This man is really too outstanding." When he said that, great trickster Mo almost vomited. He only felt that his heart and organs were all tangled up into a ball. Since when had he ever said something that went against his conscience? What the hell was wrong with him today? This sentence is really heartless. Chu Luer's anger turned into joy. She said, "How can I not understand that only mediocre people won't be jealous of them? It's very normal for people to be jealous of my brother. My brother is just so outstanding. Actually, my brother's excellence is obvious to all. Which woman wouldn't like such an outstanding man? As the saying goes, beauties love heroes. Sigh, if I wasn't my brother's sister, I would also want to marry him. Now, it's going to be taken advantage of by another woman." Mo Tianji's heart instantly felt as if it was being cut into pieces. He also cut Chu Yang into pieces. He thought to himself, if you become Qing Wu's sister, won't you be my sister? Then, won't I become your brother? Save me. However, he had a warm smile on his face. Yes, Chu Yang is indeed so outstanding that all men are jealous of him. However, they mostly admire him. How can someone be so outstanding? It's really an honor to be friends with him. Chu Luo was beaming with joy. She was in high spirits and nodded vigorously to express her agreement. She said, "Isn't that so? Sometimes I also find it very strange. My brother is only a few years older than me. How can he know so much? So knowledgeable and multi-talented?" There was more. In this world, there seemed to be nothing that he didn't understand or couldn't do. This was something he would never do. He was simply omnipotent. How can there be such a perfect person in this world? In this world, there's absolutely nothing my big brother can't do. Mo Tianji nodded repeatedly. Yes. I also admire Chu Yang's ability. We often hang out together. As the saying goes, one is marked by the company one keeps. Actually, Chu Luo chuckled. She said reservedly, "Yes, my big brother is so enviable." Mo Tianji was crying in his heart. "Big sister, that's not what I meant." However, he said, "Yes, that's too right." Mo Tianji suddenly felt that he might suffer an internal injury at any time. I really have to hand it to him. My own little sister is so devoted to him. His own little sister is also so devoted. Why can't I see what's so good about that guy? I don't dare to say anything bad about him in front of my own little sister. Otherwise, Qing Wu would immediately fall out with me. Now, I don't even dare to say anything bad about him in front of his little sister. This young lady will also fall out with me. And fall out with me as soon as I say anything. She falls out faster and fiercer than my little sister. Could it be that lolis are popular in this world? Is there still a place to reason in this world? Is there still justice? Could it be that I, Emotianji, the master of calculation and manipulation, have to go against my conscience and suck up to Chu Yang? They were both brothers, but why was the difference in treatment so big? It was too tragic. Emotianji, what's wrong with you today? Are you having a stroke? Didn't you always say that Chu Yang wasn't much? Ao Xia Yun's sarcastic voice sounded. It turned out that this guy had already sobered up. With such a good show in front of him, how could he not join in? Nonsense! Emotianji reprimanded sternly. Xia Yun, your attitude is wrong. Our big brother Chu Yang is our common big brother. If we don't even acknowledge him, how can we work together in the future? My admiration for big brother is endless. How can you, Ao Xia Yun, drive a wedge between us with just a few words? Chu Luer's eyes narrowed. She chuckled happily and said, Big brother Mo, you're absolutely right. My big brother is right. That Ao Xia Yun's character is not good. He actually speaks ill of others behind their backs. My big brother has good self-restraint. How is this person's character not good? It's simply too bad. Emotianji echoed. Yes, yes, yes. Ao Xia Yun's character is indeed too bad. Too bad. In an instant, Ao Xia Yun was in a mess. What's wrong with me? How is my character not good? It seems that I have just spoken the truth. You, Emotianji, have clearly scolded Chu Yang more than once for abducting your younger sister. And you call him a beast. So I haven't spoken the truth yet. How is it that my character is not good now? How is my character not good again? What did I say just now? How did I drive a wedge between us? Who said I was driving a wedge between us? I'm so wronged. His heart was tangled to the extreme in an instant. Turning his grief into strength, Ao Xia Yun kicked Rui Butong twice. Pig! Get up! Drink to death, you pig! Rui Butong cried out in pain and crawled up. Ao Xia Yun kicked Li Xiong too again. However, they didn't have most of the souls of the purple crystal and other metals. Some of them were too high-end and couldn't be found at all. However, there were also some that were too low-end. In other words, they were the so-called goods from the mainland. The Li clan usually didn't care about them at all. Of course, that was why they didn't have any stock. It was already too late to search for them now. It's still too little. After Emotianji took a look, he also sighed. Especially without the most important souls of the purple crystal. That's the key to setting up the array. The terrain here isn't suitable for setting up an array in the first place. We can only rely on the powerful might of the souls of the purple crystal to forcefully reverse the terrain. Without the souls of the purple crystal, we definitely can't set up the array. Emotianji said. Elderly, if that's all, forgive me for not being able to help. Li Chuanbo sighed disappointedly. Also, even with the souls of the purple crystal, elderly, the things you've gathered now are still too little. Don't talk about sheltering 700,000 people. Even 7,000 people might not be enough. Emotianji was rather exasperated and helpless. Elderly, I really can't understand. And it's impossible for me to understand. The Li clan's 10,000 years of heritage can't even gather half of the things on my list? In my opinion, this is simply inconceivable. Chapter 1503. The most basic function of purple crystals is to convert them into one's strength. With so many purple crystals, why don't they quickly distribute them to the experts in the clan to absorb and keep them for numbers? Isn't that a strange thing? Li Chuanbo was ashamed and speechless. He agreed wholeheartedly with Emotianji's words. But this was what the Li clan did before this. They mined and collected purple crystals every day. But they only kept the purple crystals. In fact, only a very, very small portion of them were distributed to the experts in the clan. Most of the rest were collected and hoarded. What was the point of hoarding them? Just as Emotianji said, you're just a pile of dead objects here. If they were given to the experts in the clan and fully provided for their cultivation, if these purple crystals were really converted into the strength of the experts, how much less pressure would they be under today? 357 billion purple crystals was such a huge number. In terms of quantity alone, it was more than enough to pile up 1,000 middle-grade supreme martial artists. If the Li clan really had 1,000 middle-grade supreme martial artists, then wouldn't the upper three heavens have long been swept away by the clan? Sigh. Such a foolish move. Mo Tianji looked up at the sky and sighed. Now that the Li clan is about to be destroyed, this huge wealth is going to fall into the pockets of others. Don't tell me that the Li clan's 10,000 years of accumulation is just to help the enemy today. This is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous, Mo Tianji said fiercely, almost as if he was gnashing his teeth. Li Chuanbo was speechless. Every word that Mo Tianji said was extremely unpleasant to the ears, but every word he said was the truth. Thinking about the Li clan's situation now, and then looking at the purple crystal hoard that was so huge that it was close to an astronomical figure, that could all be converted into the clan's own strength, Mo Tianji was so angry that he was gnashing his teeth. Li Chuanbo wanted to bang his head against the wall and die. In fact, all the super clans did this. Purple crystals were a rare resource. They were stored away for future use. They were only provided to the experts. But no clan had ever used all of these purple crystals. Because they had to leave some backup plans, this was understandable. But for a clan like the Li clan, which had accumulated billions of purple crystals, they were probably the only one in the entire continent. Right? Elderly, I wonder if you've been to the purple crystal hoard? Mo Tianji said mockingly. Those purple crystals underneath, perhaps they've already become moldy. Li Chuanbo's face turned purple as he panted heavily. After a very, very long time, Li Chuanbo said somewhat helplessly in despair. Could it be that we really can't give it a try? Is there no room for us to even try? When he said this, he was disappointed. Chapter 1504. The Great Formation could only accommodate 7,000 people. The quota was obviously too small. Most of them would have to be abandoned. Li Chuanbo's reason to the outside world was that he wanted to quickly increase his combat power and select 7,000 young disciples for training. The veteran supreme martial artists would use the Enlightenment technique to create experts to provide the clan with strength. Only talented and intelligent youths with good aptitude, strong determination and high acceptance could be selected, and so on. Li Batian was one of the candidates. On the other side, Li Wubua, Li Ju and Li Batian's father were all seated. Batian, there should be a suitable method of security for this gathering, right? Li Wubua was indeed the former clan leader of the Li clan. He could tell the crux of this sudden training selection at a glance. He laughed and said, 2 days ago, when I was chatting with Mo Tianji and the others, Rui Butong had revealed that Mo Tianji was an expert in formations. I think so. Li Batian was a little uncertain. Since there are changes after the arrangements have been made at this time, there must be a new method. And this method is definitely a battle array. And formations are Mo Tianji's specialty. And that old fool will definitely not allow Li Ju to go in as well. He is already completely disappointed in us. Li Wubua's eyes flickered for a moment. He said, the destruction of the Li clan is a foregone conclusion. This outcome is definitely irreversible. However, if the Li clan has any hope of making a comeback in the future, we must have complete control over it. When that time comes, all the old fellows, whether they should die or not, will be dead. The two of you will be the pillars of the Li clan. You will also have the highest cultivation among the youths. Didn't you say that both father and big brother will go out to battle? Elder Master obviously wants big brother to be sacrificed. Li Batian was a little confused. It's not a problem for your big brother to go out to battle. I have my ways. Instead, the most important thing now is to let your elder brother enter that so-called safe place when the time comes. Li Wubua snickered. Which old bastard decided to strip me of my position as the clan leader at this critical juncture, causing all my plans to go down the drain. But, however, the Li clan will still be in my hands in the end. Even if I can't do it personally, there's still my son. I will connect you and your big brother with both of your souls right now. This way, as long as any one of you enters, you will be able to enter. The other person only needs to activate the device. And even if it is isolated by a special formation, it will still be able to instantly locate the location. In this way, won't it be easy to enter the secret location? When the time comes, your big brother will stay outside for the time being. His eyes were full of disdain as he looked at the two high priests. Not hiding at all. Damn it. I thought that the two of you were important figures. Who would have thought that just a small matter like this would be attributed to a demon? Why don't you just say that you met Ning Tianya, Wu Jiuecheng, and the Tribulation Sword Master, who joined forces to kill you? You fought with all your might, but were defeated in the end. In the end, only the two of you managed to escape. If you said that, although I know that you are boasting, at least it is more reliable, and I can still treat you as human beings. But look at the lies of these two. Who would believe them? In the hundreds of thousands of years in the heavenly layer, when had there been such a powerful humanoid demon? At Xiao Qinyu's level, as one of the strongest experts in the world, he no longer needed to hide any of his emotions and thoughts. Attention was attention, disgust was disgust, like was like, and disdain was disdain. It's true. There was a humanoid demon with the strength of a middle-grade supreme martial artist, and an almost indestructible body that attacked us. Miao Zhendong had been through thousands of years of experience. How could he not see the disdain in Xiao Qinyu's eyes? Even though he knew that this matter was indeed his fault, he couldn't help but feel angry. Lie to you? Do I need to lie to you? Who do you think you are that I need to lie to you? Do you think you're so great just because you're the first ancestor of the Xiao clan? Forget it, let's stop here. Let's just say it's true. Xiao Qinyu's voice was light as he said, but I still want to ask you something. Your group of people have all died, and only the two of you are left. But you finally arrived. Even if it's only the two of you, it's still considered as providing assistance along the way. But what about those people who were transferred from other places? Where did they go? He smiled sinisterly. Even if they acted separately, those people were much closer to your original position. They should have arrived a long time ago. But why haven't they arrived yet? Could it be that those people were also attacked by the humanoid demon? I just don't know if the demon that attacked them also has the strength of a middle-grade supreme martial artist? It turns out that the middle-grade supreme martial artist of the upper three heavens is already so worthless. In a few more days, won't the middle-grade supreme martial artist be walking around everywhere? Miao Zhendong was tongue-tied. He didn't know how to answer for a long time. To be honest, how would he know where those people from the other routes went? But what Xiao Qinyu said wasn't wrong at all. Those people should have arrived a long time ago. But until now, they still hadn't arrived. This was really too wrong. Last night, after applying medicine, I felt so uncomfortable that I couldn't sleep much. Chapter 1505. How would I know? Miao Zhendong mumbled, almost on the verge of breaking down. It's not like we're going the same way. Naturally, he didn't know about this. Because the development of the situation over there was also quite unexpected. It was completely out of anyone's expectations. Even if Di Wuqin grew and Mo Tianji joined forces, it was still a huge variable that they definitely couldn't have predicted. The only person who had a chance to guess it was Chu Yang. But even Chu Yang wouldn't guess in that direction. That elite team of law enforcement officers, under the lead of the officers who originally belonged to Langilang, was currently rushing all the way to some place in the southeast. And this team didn't suffer a huge loss of members like Great High Priest Miao's team. The team of more than 200 people only lost less than 20 people in total. No one knew what method Interrogation Officer 1 used. But after discovering that their leader didn't go and would never go, he directly abducted the entire team and ran away. By the time Miao Zhendong and the others reached the northwest, Interrogation Officer 1's team was already about to reach their destination in the southeast. With regards to such a formless and completely impossible to guess the outcome of, everyone naturally couldn't come to a conclusion, even if they discussed it for a year. As they glared at each other, it was still Xiao Qinyu who waved his hand almost perfunctorily. Let's stop here, and not talk about it. Let's invite the two high priests to talk about that humanoid spirit you guys encountered, that has the strength of a second-grade supreme martial artist, and an indestructible body. Oh, right, from what the two high priests said just now, that spirit or whatever is still chasing after you guys? The ridicule and doubt in his tone were completely undisguised, making all the supreme martial artists present feel like laughing out loud. Miao Zhendong glared angrily. Xiao Qinyu didn't care at all. The second high priest at the side hurriedly came over to smooth things over, taking the initiative to slowly narrate the experience of his team. Miao Zhendong added a few words from time to time. As the two narrated, all the supreme martial artists present, including Xiao Qinyu, finally started to have serious expressions on their faces, and then turned serious. Everyone present was experienced, and could easily distinguish between truth and falsehood, although they did not believe what the two consecrated elders said because it was too absurd, and they even thought that the two consecrated elders were just making things up to shirk responsibility. After hearing their stories, everyone expressed their trust and acknowledgement of what the two consecrated elders had said. And trust and recognition meant there really was a miraculous existence that could suddenly appear green mist all over its body. It could make thousands of acres of forest full of vitality. It could make a tree suddenly grow rapidly. No matter what kind of injury it suffered, it could quickly recover. No matter how one looked at it, it did not seem like something a human could do. This was truly something that only a spiritual monster could do. Furthermore, he was only at the pinnacle of 8th grade supreme martial artist at the start. As he fought, he kept suffering fatal injuries, but all of a sudden, he broke through to become a 2nd grade supreme martial artist. Everyone couldn't help but raise their heads to stare at Miao Zhendong and Li Wuyo. They thought to themselves, if I didn't personally witness these two fellows speaking emotionally in front of me, and if the entire process was logical, and without any loopholes to be found, I'm afraid I would still think that these two fellows were just having a bizarre dream, and were talking nonsense in front of me. Was there really such a thing in the world? If things are really as the two high priests described, those who can do these things really seem like the doings of demons. Yi Chunchen stroked his beard. With Xiao Qinyu here, he didn't dare to raise his voice, but his tone was unusually certain. Everyone nodded in agreement. Xiao Qinyu was deep in thought. He said thoughtfully, if that's the case, if that, whatever spiritual monster is really vengeful, and has really chased us all the way here, this old man is very interested to see what exactly that thing is. What he meant was that Xiao Qinyu also believed that it was not a human but a spiritual monster. Miao Zhendong's heart turned cold. If Xiao Qinyu were to personally take action, how would there be a share for them? However, the situation was more important than the person. What could he say in his own territory? What did he dare to say? He could only put on a long face and say, Old Xiao, if I can get you to take action, it would be the end of that spiritual monster. I will definitely do my best to help. Xiao Qinyu rolled his eyes and said dispassionately, You'd better go and rest. Miao Zhendong was greatly disappointed at once. From the looks of it, he wouldn't even be able to get a mouthful of leftovers. Forget it. That monster might have already reached the level of a top-grade supreme martial artist by now. Even if he wanted to, he didn't have that ability anymore. Right at this moment, a furious voice came from outside. Miao Zhendong, you two shameless tortoise bastards, get the hell out of here. Miao Zhendong's spirit was shaken. He said, You guys still don't believe me? That spiritual monster really came. With a boom, everyone rushed out of the tent at the same time. A human-shaped spiritual monster was already too rare, not to mention the powerful beneficial effects it might have. The group of experts soared into the air almost at the same time, and rushed forward in a hurry. The group of people leaped out of the tent one after another. They raised their heads and looked up, only to see a person in the sky in front of them. His whole body was covered in green, and fluttering in the wind and snow. In the vast snowfield, he was especially eye-catching. There really was a spiritual monster. Everyone's spirit was shaken. With just one look, they could tell that this spiritual monster had an extraordinary origin. Its strength was even more shocking, and it was indeed at the level of a top-grade supreme martial artist. The reason why everyone had such an understanding was reasonable. At this moment, Dookie was floating in the air like a celestial. This was a top-grade supreme martial artist's exclusive technique, Imperial Air Flight. Imperial Air Flight was definitely different from the extreme speed of ordinary supreme martial artists. Although extreme speed allowed one to temporarily leave the ground and fly at high speed, it was still a type of lightness technique. To a large extent, it relied on gliding in the air to achieve this. Moreover, it required one to borrow the force of the air to breathe, after a certain period of time. Although the higher one's cultivation, the longer one could maintain this technique, it was still within the domain of the technique. On the other hand, imperial air flight was the true meaning of flying. Experts who had reached this realm could rely on their own cultivation to completely break free from the gravity of the earth and fly freely back to the sky. If the supreme martial artist realm was the boundary between immortals and mortals, then the supreme martial artist realm was the boundary between man and heaven. Although it was a little arbitrary to judge that this person's strength had reached the supreme martial artist realm based on the fact that he could fly, or it was not impossible that this spirit was born with the ability to fly. However, this spirit's strength was definitely extraordinary. Xiao Qinyu stepped out from the crowd and shouted, "What kind of thing are you? You actually dare to act mysterious in front of this old man?" Dukyu let out a long laugh and said, "I'm not going to talk to a blind old bastard like you. Hurry up and call out those two cowardly old bastards. This Duke will kill them and leave immediately. I won't cause any trouble for you guys." Xiao Qinyu laughed coldly and said, "Won't cause any trouble for us? What a vile creature. You actually dare to be so arrogant in front of me. You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth." Although Xiao Qinyu's tone sounded like he did not take Dukyu seriously, in fact, he was carefully analyzing the aura of this fellow in front of him. He secretly calculated in his heart, this thing's aura is not ordinary. This aura is at least at the level of an 8th grade supreme martial artist. But his appearance, although he has a human form, and his speech and actions are no different from an ordinary martial artist, the aura that emanates from his body is the purest kind of aura of nature. It is as elegant as the trees and flowers. And the aura that I can feel from his body, other than being powerful, there is also a sense of age. It seems that the so-called spirit is not completely baseless. Once he made up his mind, his eyes flickered. If the spirit was taken down by him, then his heaven-seizing great art would be able to convert the essence of this kind of spirit into his own strength. If that was really possible, then wouldn't he be able to thinking of this? His heart was really burning with passion. He shouted coldly, "That monster, since you are so reckless and rude, and insist on finding trouble with our alliance, this old man will fulfill your wish." Xiao Qinyu's voice was still echoing in the sky. His body was already in the air. He stretched out his right hand, and in an instant, thousands of palm shadows appeared in the air. Then, the thousands of palm shadows suddenly condensed and formed a huge palm, grabbing towards Dukyu in the air. The power of this palm was not outstanding. It was only maintained at the level of an 8th grade supreme martial artist. But the attack range covered a radius of 400 to 500 feet. Xiao Qinyu had already used all his strength in this attack. But the main purpose was to capture and not to kill. Because he also had his concerns. If he killed him, he would inevitably lose a large amount of spiritual energy. Even if he crippled or injured him, it would also create a flaw in his future cultivation. When Dukyu saw the incoming attack, he instantly felt that something was wrong. This old man in front of him was actually an expert among experts. Although he had already advanced to the level of an 8th grade supreme martial artist, in terms of cultivation, he was still much weaker than this old man. At that moment, he did not dare to be negligent. He stood up, waved his hands in the air and shouted, "Thousands of miles of ice and snow. I am here to let hundreds of flowers bloom." Before he finished speaking, a burst of green appeared out of nowhere, and even rose up. A layer of green vines suddenly appeared on the snowy ground, and quickly twisted up. In the blink of an eye, it transformed into a huge green dragon, and fiercely welcomed the huge palm that Xiao Qinyu had transformed into. The green vines charged all the way, and the flower buds actually gradually bloomed, and then bloomed. All the flower petals were like a storm, and at the same time, they left the branches and shot towards Xiao Qinyu's face. "Ha!" Xiao Qinyu shouted loudly. His technique changed according to his will. That big hand suddenly changed direction and closed. The attacks of both sides collided, and Xiao Qinyu could clearly feel that it was really flowers and grass that were colliding with him. Chapter 1506. Duke Wei's voice was filled with extreme anger and suppression, as if there was a blood feud that couldn't be quelled. Back when he was being hunted down and framed in the upper three heavens, the culprit was the Xiao clan. Xiao Qinyu was stunned. I didn't expect a monster like you to recognize the Xiao clan's ultimate technique. Surrender now. Duke Wei laughed bitterly. Old Xiao, since there's someone from the Xiao clan here, I'll definitely kill all of you. I'll come back later. With a bang, he forcefully broke through the encirclement of Xiao Qinyu's aura field. Like a startling rainbow, he shot off into the distance. Although he was good at the secret techniques of the fairies, he was greatly weakened in this world of ice and snow. He was definitely not Xiao Qinyu's match if he fought here. Therefore, he retreated immediately. Yi Chunshan and the others, who had been waiting for a long time, attacked from all directions, intending to stop Duke Wei from leaving. Duke Wei laughed loudly. Endless rivers and mountains. I'm the king. Do you think you can stop me? His body turned like a whirlwind. Bang, bang, bang. He exchanged blows with more than 10 8th-grade supreme martial artists at the same time. With a muffled groan, he rose from the ground before Xiao Qinyu arrived. With a turn in the air, his figure was already 1,000 feet away. In another flash, the green figure had already disappeared completely in the wind and snow. Xiao Qinyu was naturally reluctant to let him go. He chased after him at full speed. In an instant, he had already arrived at the place where Duke Wei had disappeared. But looking around, there was already no trace of that green figure on the ground. For a moment, everyone's expression didn't look too good. This spiritual monster's cultivation had not only reached the level of supreme martial artist, it had even reached the level close to the peak of the continent. It was actually so powerful. Everyone had previously suspected that Miao Zhendong and the other two high priests were exaggerating the spiritual monster's strength in order to shirk their responsibilities. Now, it seemed that these two people had clearly underestimated the spiritual monster's strength. Xiao Qinyu stood firmly in the snow and looked at the snowy sky in front of him. His eyes shone, as if deep in thought, but he didn't say anything. Right at this moment, a sudden clap of thunder rang out, and the entire sky suddenly darkened. Everyone turned pale with fright in that instant. This was the northwest, where snow was everywhere. It could be said that even on a moonless night, it wouldn't be that dark. But at this moment it was completely dark. It was pitch black. Such an unforeseen event caused everyone to turn pale with fright. What the hell is going on? Why did the sky suddenly darken? What's going on? This is the northwest. Even if night falls, how can there be no reflection from the snow? For a moment all sorts of questioning voices rose and fell. Yi Chunshan and the others had originally wanted to chase after the spiritual monster. However, at this moment, they were suddenly plunged into a world of darkness, and no one dared to act rashly. In this sudden darkness, even a peak supreme being expert panicked. The darkness continued, and a strange evil aura gradually spread out. Even an expert like Xiao Qinyu could not help but feel a chill in his heart. He could only feel drops of cold sweat seeping out of his back. A kind of indescribable fear arose. Xiao Qinyu only felt that his palms were full of sweat. Although he couldn't see anything, he still stared with his eyes wide open. This kind of panic had never happened in the past 10,000 years. What was going on? Could it be that the Tribulation Sword Master obtained the 8th fragment of the Pill Tribulation Sword and caused this change in the world? Someone asked suspiciously. This person spoke in the crowd, but the people opposite him could only hear his voice and could not see the person speaking. Immediately someone retorted, "Definitely not. The Tribulation Sword has always given off a very bright and holy aura, and its power can shake the world. How could it be so dark and evil?" Everyone felt that this made sense. However, if it was not the Tribulation Sword that caused this change, then what could have caused it? It actually caused the whole world to darken so thoroughly? The darkness grew thicker and thicker. At this moment everyone, regardless of friend or foe, felt uneasy, as if the sky had collapsed. It was a feeling of despair even darker than darkness. At this moment, it was as if the end of the world had arrived. In another direction, Chu Yang frowned and looked at the sky. What's going on? Why did it suddenly become so dark? And what is this evil feeling? It's actually so strong. Wu Jueqing also had some doubts. This is a completely illogical change in the world. How could it be? Chu Yang raised his head. There was a familiar feeling. He couldn't help but say thoughtfully, "This feeling seems somewhat familiar. I should have felt it from there before." However, it was much weaker than this time. Wu Jueqing nodded. It is indeed a very familiar feeling, and a very dangerous one at that. The two of them said this at the same time. Then the two of them suddenly fell into silence at the same time. An indescribable pressure suddenly rose in their hearts. Because just a moment ago, they both thought of where this familiarity came from. Wu Jueqing immediately thought of the Dharma Supreme's heavenly demonic aura. As for Chu Yang, the first thing he thought of was the heavenly demonic aura on Yi Zui. However, there was no doubt that whether it was the Dharma Supreme or Yi Zui, the evil aura that they had was definitely not as powerful as this one. There were simply too many powerful ones. Could it be that a heavenly demon had actually descended in this world? Could it be that such a big thing has actually really appeared? Chu Yang's voice was grave. At this point he calmed himself down and said solemnly, "Heavenly demon! Heavenly demon!" These two words were said by Chu Yang and Wu Jueqing at the same time. The two men's hearts sank along with the word blame. If that was really the case, then judging from this earth-shattering aura, no one in this world would be able to control this heavenly realm. What should they do? Wu Jueqing's heart was in turmoil. How could they be a match for such an extremely powerful evil force? Would Elder Chen Feng be a match for it? My brothers, are we fighting against such an evil force right now? Chu Yang's heart was uneasy. How could they be a match for such an extremely powerful evil force? Perhaps only with Zi Xiecheng's reappearance would they have a chance to defeat the enemy. Li Clan. Facing the darkness in the sky, Missouri Tianji placed a handful of shiny copper coins in the air. In a land of darkness, his copper coins emitted a dreamlike halo, as if carrying a milky yellow halo, churning in the air. Controlling the world and measuring the heavens. Mo Tianji's expression changed from its usual indifference. At this moment, it was so serious that it was ashen. He shouted silently in his heart and stretched out his palm. Pa, pa, pa. The copper coins landed on his palm at the same time. One coin landed on each of his 5 fingers, one on his thumb, one on his palm, one on his wrist, and one on his palm. There was still one left. It circled around the one on his palm, but it didn't land on it. Ding, ding, ding. A series of small sounds rang out. Mo Tianji's forehead was already sweating. His breathing was also a little hurried. He stared unblinkingly at the golden copper coin that was still spinning in his palm. Finally, there was a pa sound. That copper coin clasped onto the copper coin in Mo Tianji's palm, with its back facing up. Mo Tianji stared at this copper coin, calculating silently in his heart. Suddenly his face turned green, purple and then red. He spat out a mouthful of blood, but he still stared at the copper coin, unable to take his eyes off it. After a long time, he spat out another mouthful of blood. It was bright red. After spitting out 3 mouthfuls of blood, Mo Tianji couldn't hold on any longer. He sat down on the ground, looking dispirited and pale. Heavenly tribulation. Tribulation, tribulation. Heavenly demon descends. Mo Tianji let out a long breath and closed his eyes in extreme exhaustion. In another direction, Tan Tan stared at the sky and muttered angrily, "Damn it, which goddamned bastard did this? If I find out, I'll definitely destroy him." Outside the Yi clan's territory near the northwest, a figure was flying rapidly toward the northwest. That was Yi Zui. Ever since Yi Zui left the Yi clan, he could feel that the heavenly demon qi hidden in his body was showing signs of loosening. It seemed to be gradually becoming more active, and his sealed strength was also being unsealed bit by bit. His heart was filled with excitement about this. He headed all the way toward the northwest, but halfway there, the heavenly demon qi in his meridians suddenly became chaotic. It took him several days before he finally managed to straighten it out. Then, he continued to head toward the northwest. He seemed to be able to sense that there was a huge opportunity that he had yearned for his entire life there. He continued to travel tirelessly, his eyes growing more and more fervent. The moment he stepped into the snowy plains, the sky suddenly darkened. Ah, it's here. Yizue held toward the sky without warning. His voice was filled with the kind of fervent excitement and happiness that made one's blood boil. The sudden darkness did not last for a long time, but it gave people the feeling that it had lasted for countless centuries. After 15 minutes, that evil aura gradually receded, and the darkness that made one feel despair also dissipated. The world slowly regained its original clarity. Everyone present looked at each other and saw that the faces of the people around them were all pale. Although that darkness had already dissipated, that terrifying evil aura still seemed to weigh heavily on everyone's hearts. It lingered on. The feeling of despair was something that no one could forget, and no one dared to forget. Everyone felt that something big was about to happen in the Heaven Layer continent. In a secret ice cave somewhere in the northwest, the Dharma Supreme, dressed in black, had just completed his cultivation and stood up abruptly. The next moment he was already outside the cave. There was a hint of satisfaction in the Dharma Supreme's eyes. Wu Jiuecheng, if I find you again this time, you will definitely die. His body was faintly filled with black aura. It was the demonic technique. Suddenly, at this very moment, the sky darkened. An evil aura that the Dharma Supreme was familiar with suddenly filled the entire world. The Dharma Supreme's cultivation was extremely high, and he was also of the same origin as that evil aura. He immediately understood. Chapter 1507. This force is much stronger than mine. If I go near it recklessly, will I be devoured by it? The Dharma Supreme's cultivation was much higher than Yizue's. The first thing that came to his mind was not an opportunity but a crisis. Then he thought, if I get my hands on this force, who will I be afraid of in this world? Even if Wu Jiuecheng and Ning Tianya join forces, what do I have to fear? Even if that terrifying person comes again, I will still have a chance to deal with him. After a while, the darkness retreated completely, but in the eyes of the Dharma Supreme, he could clearly see a faint wisp of black aura moving rapidly toward the south in the sky. The Dharma Supreme frowned. In the end, he still decided to catch up and take a look. At the same time, he touched the heaven-nourishing jade in his chest. He thought to himself, even if it is harmful, I still have the heaven-nourishing jade that counters dark demonic aura. It shouldn't be difficult to get away. With this thought he floated up. The next moment, he had already spread out his unique divine cognition and found the two figures. After giving a few instructions, he became a ball of black fog and disappeared without a trace with a swoosh. The battle formation had been fully set up. Today was already the evening of the first day. Emo Tianji had already recovered part of his spirit. Previously, he had tried his best to calculate the heavenly secrets, causing his body to become extremely weak. In addition, there was another extremely troublesome matter. This unexpected change made Emo Tianji's situation even worse. After eating an incomplete version of the heavy pill, his body recovered. But even so, the great trickster's brows were still tightly knitted and never relaxed again. Elderly, after today's battle, the Li clan will be gone, Emo Tianji said solemnly. Right now, the two of them were not talking alone, but in the main hall of the Li clan, in front of all the high-level supreme martial artists of the Li clan. Emo Tianji did not use telepathy, but just said it clearly. The current situation was already clear. No matter how much comforting words such as maybe, or maybe were, it was meaningless. Emo Tianji might as well use the most direct method to explain the current situation and break the ice. Li Chuanbuo's expression was calm. He said solemnly, indeed, the Li clan has already lost almost everything. The outcome is already set. Back then, this old man carried out my father's wishes and established the Li clan in a situation where I had almost nothing. I created this foundation that has been passed down for 10,000 years. However, I never dreamed that the Li clan that was established in my hands would also be destroyed by me in the end. But now that things have come to this, no matter how much I feel, it's useless. It's just that I really didn't expect that the Li clan would be destroyed by the hands of its closest brother. It's hard to distinguish between kindness and righteousness. Li Chuanbuo smiled lightly. Although there is always a reason behind everything, now that things have come to this, there's nothing more to say. Just take it as repayment for the sins that the Li clan has committed all these years. We'll use the entire Li clan to repay them completely. Li Chuanbua chuckled. Senior is magnanimous. Mo Tianji sincerely praised. Then he smiled bitterly and said, the outcome is already unavoidable. But we still have to face it. I will do my best to make the invaders pay the heaviest price. Mo Tianji insipidly said. Tonight, let's take our positions. The battle of life and death is right in front of us. Everyone, if there's anything that needs to be said or done, you must finish everything before tonight. Once the time is up, there won't be any more chances. We've already made preparations long ago. We don't have any more worries. We can only do our best to kill the enemy. Everyone shouted in unison. We've killed a lot of people. We've killed a lot of enemies and innocent people. We've also done a lot of outrageous things. If we can drag a few people down with us when we're about to die, it'll be worth it. That's right. We're already doomed. Then, what's the point of being reluctant? Killing to our heart's content is the most important thing. Mo Tianji nodded. He thought to himself, if the various signs earlier are really the omens of the extraterrestrial demon's descent, then it's important that we end the war here as soon as possible. No matter what, the big clans will have to suffer great losses in this war. As for the future developments, there's really no way to predict it now. That night, Li Chuanbua stood alone at the top of the mountain. His peak second-level supreme martial artist divine cognition spread out without any reservation and shot straight into the sky. As the divine cognition spread out, the falling snow in the sky was actually completely driven out by his will. An extremely powerful force stirred up the weather just like that. Everyone present could clearly see that the wind and snow in the sky could no longer invade Li Chuanbua's surroundings. The area that they couldn't invade gradually expanded, as though there was no limit at all. In the end, even the clouds and mist in the sky were neatly separated by the divine cognition. Slowly shifting to the sides, it was as though two large hands were slowly pushing the clouds and mist apart, revealing the clear blue sky in the northwest that hadn't been completely revealed for hundreds of thousands of years. Everyone from the Li clan below couldn't help but raise their heads and stare at this newly revealed starry sky in a daze. They were witnessing this huge miracle of using human strength to drive away the wind and snow, push away the clouds and mist, and see the starry sky. The night was deep. The starry sky was as vast as the sea, as though it contained countless secrets. The northwest starry sky that was shrouded in wind and snow all year round. At this moment, heaven and earth were clear and transparent, and the universe was clear and bright. Perhaps this was the only time they would ever see it in their entire lives. Tears suddenly streamed down someone's face, choking up so much that he couldn't speak anymore. Li Chuanbua's expression was unusually solemn, filled with a touch of pilgrimage. The northwest, the Li clan has been entrenched here for more than 10,000 years, yet our grandchildren have never seen the true appearance of the starry sky. Tonight, at this moment, since the clan has already reached the end of its existence, then let us return to silence under the starry sky that we have never seen before. For this, even if I exhaust all my cultivation, what harm is there in that? In the distance on top of a tall mountain, the founding ancestor of the Shao clan, Shao Chenyu, stood quietly with his hands behind his back. He raised his head and looked at the abnormal phenomenon in the sky. The clouds and mist in the sky were moving abnormally, and he let out a long and deep sigh. Suddenly, he understood Li Chuanbua's intention. Do you want to die in battle under the starry sky? Fine. I'll fulfill your wish. I'll definitely fulfill your wish. He closed his eyes. Suddenly, his white robes fluttered even though there was no wind. A similar peak-grade supreme martial artist aura soared into the sky, instantly winding through the sky. He was actually using his endless cultivation to continue moving the clouds and mist, moving them endlessly away from his side. The moment he made his move, Li Chuanbua immediately sensed it. His eyes flickered, but he didn't make any response in the end. He only immediately withdrew the power in that direction, and turned to push the clouds on the other side with all his might, continuing to push them in the opposite direction. The area of the starry sky became wider and wider. In the end, the direction of the clouds and mist gradually became inertia. Although the two of them had already stopped and withdrawn their astonishing cultivation, the clouds and mist in midair still rolled and rolled away to both sides. On this day and this night, in the northwest horizon, there was no wind, no snow, no clouds, and no mist. The blue sky was clear and bright. Not a speck of dust could be seen. The northwest sky, which had been covered by wind, snow, and clouds for hundreds of thousands of years, revealed its original appearance of endless magnificence for the first time. Such stars, such a night, such a massacre, such emotions. The sky that was originally covered was now even clearer and cleaner than other places. The starlight also seemed to shine even more brightly. Suddenly, two long howls soared into the sky, accompanied by the different emotions of their owners. Li Chuanbua stood alone on the peak and howled into the sky. His howl was like a dragon, stretching across the vast sky. However, it carried with it endless longing and endless bitterness. Father, you have already been missing for 10,000 years, a whole 10,000 years, but I don't know if you are still around? If you are still around, which part of this starry sky would you be at? Would you be overlooking the earth and watching the common people? Would you know that our Li clan will decline tonight? On this night, the two supreme martial artists stood on their respective peaks just like that, not moving at all. Even though their cultivation was top-notch and distance didn't exist between them, they still didn't look at each other. However, they also seemed to be accompanying each other. On the morning of the 10th day, the decisive battle was about to arrive. Mo Tianji appeared on one of the tallest peaks near the battlefield. By his side, Ao Xian and Rui Butong were actually missing, which was rare. There were only Chu Luer, Wan Renjia, Cheng Duiying and Bao Buhuan. However, accompanying and protecting him was Chu Luer's request. As Ao Xian and Rui Butong were bent on participating in the battle, Chu Luer volunteered to be their bodyguard. Reaching the peak and facing the vast earth and vast sky, Chu Luer couldn't help but feel very carefree. An inexplicable feeling rose in her heart. No wonder so many men want to reach the peak. It turns out that this feeling is really good, really good. Although I am a woman, I also want to stand at the peak of the world like today. How do you feel? Not bad, right? Mo Tianji asked with a smile. Very good. Really very good. Chu Luer's pretty eyes sparkled. One day we will stand at the true peak. Mo Tianji smiled warmly. Although this is the peak, it is only the peak within the range of the heavens. The peak today is just the beginning for us. That's all. I know that you are talking about the true peak, the legendary Heavenly Imperial Court. Chu Luer smiled and said, I also want to go up there. The most important thing is that I also want to stand at the true peak. Chu Luer suddenly laughed crisply and shouted, I will definitely go up there. I will definitely go up there. Her crisp and tender voice traveled far and wide, reverberating in the air for a long time. Several patches of snow on the nearby mountain peaks were shaken off, making a loud rumbling sound. Everyone on the battlefield looked up at the same time, searching for the owner of the voice. It's Luer. Why is she on the battlefield? What is she doing here? In the distance, Wu Jueqing was a little anxious. Why is this little girl not listening to me and running around? Is this a fun place? Chu Yang was also a little surprised. Why is Luer here? Wu Jueqing frowned. In the end, he was still worried. He said, I have to go and warn them. Don't let this bunch of bastards implicate my disciple. Chapter 1508. Chu Yang couldn't help but feel a little speechless. Big brother, a great battle is about to begin here. You're not even participating, yet you're interfering with other people's decisions. However, Minister Chu was still in full agreement with Wu Jueqing's decision, who asked the beneficiary to be my younger sister. Diwu Qingru. On the top of the mountain, Mo Tianji raised his voice and shouted. His voice rang out. On the opposite side, on a similarly highest peak, Diwu Qingru sat upright. Beside him were only Lan Mofeng and a few others. The two supreme commanders naturally had a tacit understanding. This battle was the moment to determine the true victor between the two of them, regardless of whether it was inside or outside the game. Mo Tianji. Diwu Qingru smiled. Today, we'll settle this with a battle. Mo Tianji's clear voice reverberated in the air. No regrets in life or death. No regrets in victory or defeat. Diwu Qingru smiled and said, That's right. No regrets in life or death. No regrets in victory or defeat. Although Imo Tianji and Diwu Qingru were very far away and couldn't really see each other, they could still hear each other's words clearly. The sound transmissions from supreme martial artist level experts traveled exceptionally far in the silent and relatively empty sky. The moment they realized that they were standing on opposite peaks, there was a smile in their eyes. That was a smile of knowing each other's hearts and understanding. It was indeed so. A well-matched opponent was, in another sense, a confidant. The pride of a military advisor of a generation, and the conceit of a legendary tactician, made the two of them choose to confront each other head-on in this final battle. A head-on confrontation, deployment of troops, battle formations against the enemy, to determine the victor. With a dignified army, with a righteous flag, with a mighty and magnificent overt scheme, to completely defeat the other party. Only a head-on deployment of troops and battle formations was the true standard of a legendary tactician. Schemes and tricks, winning by surprise, could ultimately only be used in coincidental moments. Moreover, devious and unusual schemes would also give the other party a lot of unnecessary buffer time. As the saying went, speed is the most important thing in war. In such a head-on deployment of troops and battle formations, one mistake would result in the loss of the entire game. Once a move was lost, it would be difficult to recover. Even if the losing party reacted later, it would still be a beat too late. And this slap would often determine the outcome of the battle. Therefore, to predict the direction of the battle and make timely responses, there must not be any mistakes. Any miscalculation could lead to an irreversible failure. If they didn't deal with it properly, it would easily lead to many casualties. Countless lives would disappear before their eyes. The two strategists simultaneously launched the cruelest way of fighting for the strategists. At present, the strength of both sides was not very balanced, and the allied forces held too much of an advantage. On the side of the 8 great clans and the law enforcement officer coalition army, there was 1 peak-grade supreme martial artist, 8 middle-grade supreme martial artists, 40 8th-grade supreme martial artists, 10 7th-grade supreme martial artists, more than 200 middle-grade supreme martial artists, and more than 1,000 supreme martial artists of various levels. There were also 15,000 saint-level experts. As for the Li clan's side, Jiyu had 1 high-grade supreme martial artist and 3 low-grade supreme martial artists. The friends whom Li Chuanbua had relied on the most in his life had also appeared in this battle. The life and death divine blade Chu Xiangge, who was known as the Life Guarantee, also came out at the last moment and appeared. Chu Xiangge was a middle-stage supreme martial artist and Li Chuanbua's sworn brother. He was known as the Divine Saber of Life and Death, and was a rare saber supreme in the level heavens continent. He was also Li Chuanbua's last and greatest trump card. Other than that, there were 8 8th-grade supreme martial artists, 17 7th-grade supreme martial artists, and 25 middle-grade supreme martial artists. There were 10 5th-grade supreme martial artists, and another 10 supreme martial artists below them. There were a total of 1,000 5th-grade martial artists and above. Even if Mo Tianji, Ao Xieyun, and a few others were included, the overall strength assessment was just a drop in the bucket. It was difficult to affect the balance of the overall situation. In terms of the actual strength of both sides, the difference was calculated by 10 times. Therefore, what Diwu Qingru wanted was complete victory. With such an advantage, if he still couldn't achieve complete victory in the end, it would be equivalent to Diwu Qingru losing to Mo Tianji. Diwu Qingru's bottom line was to lose 20% of his strength in exchange for the complete destruction of the Li clan. And Mo Tianji's standard was to cause unlimited damage to the enemy with the limited military strength they had now. At the very least, they had to cause more than 30% damage to the enemy. This was the goal that Mo Tianji had set for himself. In a situation where one's strength was obvious, to cause such damage with a weak military strength was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. No, what was so difficult about ascending to the heavens? As long as one was a 2nd-grade supreme martial artist, he or she would have the ability to do so. Therefore, the difficulty should be comparable to breaking through the void. The final outcome of the battle had long been decided. there would be no accidents with the eventual destruction of the Li clan. The newcomer lowered his head slightly and looked indifferently at the allied forces in front of him. An invisible pressure came crashing down from above. Xiao Qinyu suddenly felt as if his chest was suddenly pressed down by a huge rock. He actually felt a little breathless and suffocated. He couldn't help but turn pale with fright. With Xiao Qinyu's cultivation, even if a rock weighing a few hundred kilograms or a few thousand kilograms really pressed down on his chest, he might not feel suffocated. But at this moment, he really had such a feeling. When he saw Wu Jueqing's face clearly, his heart was even more shocked. Although he had never met him in person, Wu Jueqing's portrait was something that every big clan had. Because he was an existence that absolutely couldn't be provoked. An existence that was even more terrifying than Ning Tianya, Buluqing and the Feng and Yu couple. Poison Dr. Wu Jueqing, who could poison thousands of miles. Xiao Qinyu floated up. He actually didn't soar into the sky but walked over step by step. He walked out of the group and bowed respectfully. To think that Elder Wu would actually grace us with his presence. Qinyu was very apologetic for not going out to meet you. Please forgive me. Xiao Qinyu's attitude caused an uproar among the allied forces. Who was Xiao Qinyu? The first-generation elder master of the Xiao clan, a peak-grade supreme martial artist, and the #1 expert of the allied forces. When had he ever been so submissive to anyone? However, the person before him had accomplished this feat by merely showing himself. From the beginning to the end, he just showed up and said one sentence. Who exactly was this person? There was even a look of heartfelt shock in the eyes of some people. From Xiao Qinyu's words, they could determine who the person in front of them was. They couldn't help but be shocked and see stars. An indescribable feeling of helplessness welled up in them. Could it be that in today's battle, they actually had to fight with this legendary killing star? Wasn't that courting death? As for the people of the Chun clan who had fought with Wu Jueqing back then, their faces were even more ashen. There weren't many of them left now, but as long as they still existed, how could they not recognize Wu Jueqing? Now that they saw Wu Jueqing again, how could they not remember how Wu Jueqing didn't really make a move back then, and left a ground full of corpses as he talked and laughed? Would Wu Jueqing's sudden appearance affect today's battle situation? Because this legendary figure had the ability to change the entire situation. Other than having the strength of a peak-grade supreme martial artist, Wu Jueqing was also the poison doctor. If he participated in this battle, he might really change the battle situation. Even if the allied forces could still win in the end, they would definitely have to pay an extremely heavy price. Chapter 1509. Otherwise, why would he say that Xiao Qinyu was the clan head of the Xiao clan? His words were cleverly said, not only putting Wu Jueqing on a pedestal, but also ensuring that he would not participate in the battle. Not to mention that Wu Jueqing was definitely not the Li clan's helper. Even if he was, he would be too embarrassed to say it now. Don't talk nonsense, I won't fall for it. If I'm really here to help the Li clan, no matter how beautiful your words are, I will still take action. Let's get down to business. I'm only here to say one thing. I want to say something seriously, said Wu Jueqing indifferently. He turned around and pointed. Do you see that? That little girl over there is my disciple. Xiao Qinyu raised his eyes and took a look. Instantly his face turned bitter. At such a distance, even a peak-level supreme martial artist wouldn't be able to see anything. He didn't know what Wu Jueqing was pointing at, but there was no doubt that he was pointing at the Li clan. That is my only disciple, Chu Luer. Wu Jueqing said indifferently. She is there now. I don't wish for her to be harmed by anyone. That's all. Everyone was speechless. That was the enemy's command center, the absolute core area. Now it had become a restricted area. They couldn't move anymore. And that's all. What kind of words were these? What kind of situation was this? There was already a strategy in the previous battle plan. When everyone wanted to join the battle, they would gather the most elite experts to execute a decapitation operation to eliminate the Li clan's high-end combat power. Now that Wu Jueqing said this, wasn't it obvious that he was biased? But if they didn't agree, they didn't dare to? Even a peak-level supreme martial artist like Xiao Qinyu didn't dare to. Seeing that no one agreed, Wu Jueqing was a little angry. His voice became a little colder. That is my disciple, my only disciple. Do you all understand? His tone was close to berating. Everyone only felt a lump in their chest, almost unable to breathe. But facing Wu Jueqing, facing the poison doctor, who dared to say no? If the Allied forces didn't hesitate to fight, they indeed had the ability to kill Wu Jueqing. But at least 80% of the people present, or even more, would be wiped out. And it was only a possibility. The results of the battle belonged to everyone, but their lives belonged to them. Against Wu Jueqing, there was the possibility of being consigned to eternal damnation at every turn. Whoever was willing to take the lead, whoever took the lead would be done for first. Xiao Qinyu pondered for a moment before replying respectfully. We naturally wouldn't dare to offend Senior Wu's beloved disciple. But now that the two sides are at war, it's inevitable that your beloved disciple won't be taken care of properly. Senior Wu, since you don't intend to participate in the war, why don't you take your beloved disciple away from the battlefield? Staying in this world is the truth. Let me reiterate again. I will not participate in your battle. This kind of worldly battle formation is indeed completely meaningless to me. However, if my disciple is injured because of this, then, no matter which clan he is injured in, there is no need for that clan to exist anymore. Everyone cursed in their hearts. Motherfucker, you've already stepped forward to take sides, and you still have the cheek to say that you won't participate. If you're not participating, then what are you doing here? Are you here to do some freaking performance art? No matter how nasty the curses were in their hearts, no one dared to make a sound. At this point, whoever made a sound would be the unlucky one. Everyone could tell that Wu Jueqing was a little angry. His eyes also had some malicious intentions. As if he was looking for someone to show his power to? Who would be willing to step forward and be this chicken to warn others? Even if their heads were kicked by a donkey, they wouldn't step forward. Wu Jueqing smiled and said, Xiao Qinyu, do you think I can do it? Xiao Qinyu's complexion turned purple. He took 2 deep breaths and forcefully suppressed his anger. Senior's divine might is unparalleled. Destroying a mere clan by yourself is naturally as easy as flipping your hand. Wu Jueqing laughed and said, Well said. My request is that simple. Since that's the case, I'm relieved. Everyone fight as you should. Just don't make any mistakes. I'll take my leave now. Then he actually smiled. That little girl is actually here to play. If you let her play happily, won't everyone be happy? Her name is Luer. Luer of course has to be happy. His white figure soared into the sky with a whoosh. With a turn in the air, he disappeared without a trace. Only then did everyone feel the huge pressure on them disappear instantly. They all let out a sigh of relief. Did everyone hear that? Xiao Qinyu said with a dark face. No one is allowed to touch that little girl. Don't make any mistakes. And don't make any mistakes. Everyone felt so wrong that they wanted to die. Motherfucker, what is this? You already told us not to make any mistakes, and you still want us to fight as we should? How else can we fight? Motherfucker. Who the hell wants to touch that little girl? We want to touch the people around her. That master of calculation and manipulation, Motng. Now if we touch Motng, that little girl definitely won't let us. If we touch that little girl, Wu Jueqing will definitely not let us. And the consequence will be that our entire clan will be destroyed. But if we don't move, are we just going to watch that little girl calmly command us? And we're even responsible for letting her play happily. Won't everyone be happy? Pooh. How could you say something like that? If we don't all die, will your disciple be happy? If we want to let her play happily, then we'll all commit mass suicide. Should we be happy just because her name is Luer? Then if I change my name to exterminating the world, won't I really exterminate the world? Damn it. In all the wars that we've never fought with such grievances. Yi Xiaoyao said. Elder Xiao is right. Everyone, don't make any mistakes. Whoever wants to touch her can do it. Anyway, the Yi clan won't touch her. Everyone rolled their eyes. Motherfucker. Xiao Qinyu cursed angrily and turned around. Everyone hung their heads dejectedly. They felt as if they had eaten feces. The imposing aura and high fighting spirit just now were actually reduced by half. On the contrary, The aura of the other side was like a tsunami. The sound of killing was earth-shattering. Everyone's blood was boiling. The battle was about to begin. At this moment, both sides that were about to fight to the death were silent. Diwu Qingru looked at the vast plains in front of him and was really puzzled. On such a flat terrain, what exactly did Mo Tianji rely on to be so confident and sure of dealing with him? The main battlefield of the two sides was surrounded by mountains. Only the boundary of the heart was unusually vast and empty, like a plain. This was a little strange. Battles that took place on such a battlefield were usually only suitable for frontal assaults, and not for any kind of strategy or layout. No matter how ingenious one's improvisation was, in such a vast plain, one would lose most of the opportunities. Because no matter what changes one made, in such an environment where there was almost no concealment, the other side would definitely see it at the first moment. As long as there was no fundamental error in judgment, it would not affect the outcome of the battle. And with Diwu Qingru's wisdom, it was absolutely impossible for him to make a fundamental error in judgment. In other words, Mo Tianji had chosen this place for the decisive battle. And this was tantamount to fixing himself in a position where he was bound to lose. There was such a huge disparity in strength between the two sides. Yet, they still chose to fight head-on, without taking advantage of the terrain advantage. Wasn't it puzzling? Bookhouse. 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 Mo Tianji didn't look like someone who would commit suicide. Further north of the plains was a continuous stretch of mountains. This was the location of the final battle that Diwu Qingru had predicted. Chapter 1510. The Li clan as the host had the advantage of being familiar with the terrain. Wouldn't they be able to unleash their strength better? Taking advantage of the situation and defeating the enemy was the right way to go. Not only Diwu Qingru, but even Chu Yang, Tan Tan and the others also fixed their gazes on this place. However, Mo Tianji took the initiative to move the battlefield 1,000 miles forward. In this way, the geographical advantage was gone. The Li clan, whose actual strength was far inferior, lost the geographical advantage and became even weaker. What was Mo Tianji trying to do? Xiao Qinyu and the others rushed back and told Diwu Qingru about Wu Jucheng's interference. This news was enough to affect the final outcome of the battle. Naturally, they had to inform the leader of the final battle as soon as possible. However, what puzzled everyone was that Diwu Qingru wasn't angry, but happy when he heard the news. Under such an absolute advantage, if he still wanted to use the decapitation operation to assassinate Mo Tianji and disrupt the morale of the army and destroy the last source of confidence of the Li clan, he would be clearly bullying them. In a battle between two armies, there was nothing they wouldn't do. Diwu Qingru could use the decapitation operation against anyone, even against Chu Yang, the master of the Calamity Sword. As long as there was a need, he would still use the decapitation operation without hesitation. He would first destroy the command pivot and the pillar of confidence of the enemy. However, against Mo Tianji, whether there was a way or not, he was absolutely unwilling to use such a method. He could be despicable and shameless on the battlefield, but he couldn't touch the command pivot. Because Mo Tianji was the same as Diwu Qingru. He was an existence that fought with his brain. The battle between them was only a battle between the wise. They only relied on their own intelligence and wisdom against the enemy. If he couldn't give Mo Tianji a relatively fair fight, and simply used the strongest force to crush and kill a wise man, even Diwu Qingru himself would feel that he had an unfair advantage, and wouldn't feel any sense of accomplishment. He might even develop an inner demon because of this. He would vaguely feel that he was afraid of losing to Mo Tianji. That was why he used such a purely violent method that shouldn't be used. That was why he didn't agree with such a strategic plan. If it weren't for the insistence of the clan heads, Diwu Qingru would have completely rejected this proposal. Now that Wu Jucheng had intervened, Mo Tianji could use this as a pretext to make a fuss. This was exactly what Diwu Qingru wanted. Therefore, Diwu Qingru didn't feel the slightest bit of disgust towards this unfavorable variable. In fact, he was actually very grateful to Wu Jucheng. Why did Mo Tianji choose that place for the final battle? Mo Lair was very suspicious. When the two of them saw that there was no movement, they also went down to take a look. He had just returned. Due to Mo Tianji's change of plans, their ambush location became somewhat far away from the battlefield. As the last and strongest successor of the Black Demon, Mo Lair naturally had a lot of knowledge about battle formations and killing. Top-notch assassins were the most sensitive to geographical environments. However, she was clueless about Mo Tianji's choice. She really didn't understand why Mo Tianji had given up on a good location for the decisive battle. Time, location, and people. These were the essential elements of a battle since ancient times. The time was decided by both sides, so it was indisputable. As for the people, the decision-makers of both sides had the highest authority, and no one could disobey their orders. Therefore, both sides were more or less equally matched in this aspect. Moreover, Mo Tianji's overall fighting strength wasn't taken into account. As for the location, it was almost the only place where Mo Tianji and the Li clan had a slight advantage. Yet, Mo Tianji chose to do the opposite and gave up his advantage at the crucial moment of the decisive battle. It wasn't that Chu Yang didn't have any doubts about this either. He was also very confused. Rubbing his chin, he said, "This battle formation, what is it for? Is it to set up a battle formation? But even if it's a battle formation, it's not like Diwu Qingru doesn't know it. In the face of superior forces, even the most mysterious battle formation would be useless." Mo Qingwu smiled lightly and said, "I advise you not to waste your time thinking about it. If you can guess my second brother's intentions, Diwu Qingru would have guessed it long ago too. Don't worry. My second brother has never been willing to take a loss when doing things. Since he has set it up like this, he must have his reasons. Just watch his performance." Chu Yang nodded in agreement. Little Wu is right. It's because even we can't understand it, that Diwu Qingru definitely can't either. Although I don't understand, I have a feeling that Diwu Qingru will definitely suffer a big loss this time. Mo Tianji is so evil. Mo Qingwu said unhappily. How is my second brother evil? Doesn't he just like to pretend to be mysterious, so that people can't understand him? That's not to the extent of saying that he's evil. Seeing that Mo Qingwu didn't agree with him, Chu Yang smiled obsequiously and said, "Whatever little Wu says is right. You're right. Women still need to be coaxed." He thought in his heart. With the past and present misunderstandings resolved, it seems that Mo Tianji's status is showing signs of rising. This won't do. I have to suppress him as soon as possible. Mo Qingwu said. But second brother is indeed quite annoying sometimes. For example, every time he succeeds in his schemes, I want to turn around and leave when I see the smug smile on his face. Chu Yang said in surprise. Smug smile? What smug smile? Does Tianji have that kind of smug smile? Why didn't I notice it? Mo Qingwu curled her lips and said, "That's because you're ignorant. Every time his face shows that kind of mysterious and confident smile, it's when he's the most smug in his heart. Every time he makes people run in circles, he'll smile like that. He's especially good at pretending. In the eyes of others, he's a strategist and has a great demeanor. But only I know that at that time, he's already bursting with joy, beaming from ear to ear and getting carried away." Chu Yang's face was full of sweat. "At most, I said that he's bad. You're not happy. But what did you say about him yourself?" But in the end, no one knew him better than his sister. Mo Qingwu's memories from her past life had recovered. Coupled with the impressions of this life, her analysis of Mo Tianji could be said to be at the level of an expert. He might not be able to analyze other people so thoroughly, but analyzing Mo Tianji was as easy as taking something out of his pocket. It was incomparably accurate. He was the brains of a generation, the peerless military advisor. In this world, the only person who could restrain him was his younger sister. This matter, no matter how you looked at it, was a little comical. Or rather, it should be said that everything has its nemesis. The greatest nemesis of Mo Tianji was none other than Mo Qingwu. Regardless of the joys and sorrows, the sun rose as usual. It added a lot of magnificent and fantastical splendor to this land before the battle. It hadn't appeared in this northwest land for hundreds of thousands of years. But today the sun shone brightly. The beautiful scenery created was enchanting, enough to dazzle anyone. It was unknown if the heavens and earth also wanted to bear witness to this vast battle. But a cloud of snow mist suddenly rose into the air. It floated in the air, neither high nor low. Under the illumination of the sun, it transformed into a rainbow-colored rainbow. Moreover, it was constantly changing shape and color. At times, it was like a rainbow that traversed the heaven and earth. At other times, it turned into countless galloping horses that soared into the sky. At other times, it turned into pavilions and towers. Everyone couldn't help but be a little fascinated by this strange sight. At this moment, it was as if everyone wasn't here to fight but to sightsee. However, just as everyone was watching this rare spectacle with rapt attention, a figure suddenly appeared in front of them. Motianji said indifferently, "Elderly, gong me heaven absolute divine formation. Start setting it up immediately." Li Chuanbua nodded and waved his hand. The people below immediately got into action. Then, the flags fluttered and swayed. The team of 8,000 people immediately gathered. Motianji's gentle voice rang in the air. "Brother Diwu, the formation has been activated." Chu Yang was stunned and said, "Smug smile? What smug smile? Does Tianji have that kind of smug smile? Why didn't I notice it?" Mo Qingwu curled her lips and said, "That's because you're ignorant. Every time he shows that mysterious and confident smile on his face, it's when he's the most smug in his heart. Every time he makes people run in circles, he'll smile like that. He's especially good at pretending. In other people's eyes, he's a strategist and has a great demeanor. But only I know that at that time, he's already bursting with joy in his heart, beaming with joy and losing his sense of measure." Chu Yang's face was full of sweat. "At most, I said that he's bad. You're not happy, but what did you say about him yourself?" But in the end, no one knew him better than his sister. Mo Qingwu's memories from her past life had recovered. Coupled with her impression of this life, her analysis of Mo Tianji could be said to be at the level of an expert. He might not be able to analyze other people so thoroughly, but analyzing Mo Tianji was as easy as taking something out of his pocket. It was incomparably accurate. He was the brains of a generation, the peerless military advisor. In this world, the only person who could restrain him was his younger sister. This matter, no matter how you looked at it, was a little comical. Or rather, it should be said that everything has its nemesis. The greatest nemesis of Mo Tianji was none other than Mo Qingwu. Regardless of the joys and sorrows, the sun rose as usual. It added a lot of magnificent and fantastical splendor to this land before the battle. It hadn't appeared in this northwest land for hundreds of thousands of years. But today the sun shone brightly. The beautiful scenery created was enchanting, enough to dazzle anyone. It was unknown if the heavens and earth also wanted to bear witness to this vast battle. But a cloud of snow mist suddenly rose into the air. It floated in the air, neither high nor low. Under the illumination of the sun, it transformed into a rainbow-colored rainbow. Moreover, it was constantly changing shape and color. At times, it was like a rainbow that traversed the heaven and earth. At other times, it turned into countless galloping horses that soared into the sky. At other times, it transformed into pavilions and towers. Everyone couldn't help but be a little fascinated by this strange sight. At this moment, everyone seemed to not be here to fight but to sightsee. However, just as everyone was focused on this rare sight that was hard to come by in 10,000 years, Mo Tianji said indifferently, "Elderly, gong me heaven absolute divine formation. Start setting it up immediately." Li Chuanbua nodded and waved his hand. The people below immediately got into action. Then the flags fluttered and swayed. The army of 8,000 people immediately gathered. Mo Tianji's gentle voice rang in the air. "Brother Diwu, the formation has been set up. Do you dare to break it?" Mo Tianji was challenging him. "Formation?" Diwu Qingrou's heart skipped a beat. He raised his head and looked over. 7 to 8 people suddenly leaped out from the opposite side. They floated down from the mountain, as if they were riding on clouds. Then, Teams of martial artists emerged from the clouds in front of them, at an extremely fast speed. Like long dragons, they swarmed toward the battlefield. Could it be that Mo Tianji wants to compete with me in terms of formations? Diwu Qingrou's eyes were solemn, but he was sneering in his heart. Mo Tianji, should I say that you're overestimating yourself, or that you're underestimating this battle of wits? One wrong move, and you'll lose everything. A rash decision will lead to an irreversible defeat. It's not just a matter of words. Mo Tianji, you're obviously too rash. In the Li clan's army, the 7 to 8 supreme martial artists, led by Li Xiangxi at the front, had already crossed the center line between the two sides. But they still didn't stop. The speed of supreme martial artist experts was not to be underestimated. In the blink of an eye, this group of people had advanced another 17 to 18 miles. Their current position was already not far from the Allied forces. Even with the naked eye, they could already vaguely see them. If the entire area was compared to a straight line, then their current position was already 2/3 of the way. Just as the Allied forces were about to move out to meet the enemy, the momentum of the 8 supreme martial artists suddenly came to a halt. They attacked at the same time. However, the target of their attack wasn't anyone from the Allied forces. With a boom, snow filled the sky. Snow flew into the air, blurring one's vision. No matter how strong an expert was, he couldn't see anything at all under such low visibility. He could only hear the continuous sounds of attacks and explosions. The 8 supreme martial artists seemed to be carrying out some kind of work in that area of thick fog. Diwu Qingru waved his hand, indicating for everyone to calm down and not act rashly. They should wait for the enemy to come. He wanted to see what kind of tricks the other party could come up with. Since Mo Tianji had challenged him directly, it meant that the other party must have made arrangements. However, no matter what arrangements Mo Tianji could come up with, Diwu Qingru had absolute confidence that he could break through them. Countering all changes by remaining unchanged was a military principle. On one hand, primary school students were sent to participate in the battle. On the other hand, they had directly mobilized the regular army. That was the difference. The difference in strength was like heaven and earth. Xiao Qinyu looked up to the sky and laughed wildly. Chuanbua, my good brother. Actually, there's something I've wanted to tell you for a long time. The reason why you've fallen to your current state is because you pursue fairness in everything. But you don't know what fairness is? Fairness? There is no such thing as fairness in this world. Xiao Qinyu's wild laughter reverberated between heaven and earth. Fairness has never existed since the beginning of the world. The sky will always be the sky, and the earth will always be the earth. If we really want to be fair, then shouldn't the heavens and earth also need to swap places every once in a while? Why has it never happened before? Ever since people appeared, there has been even less true fairness. Both are born after 10 months of pregnancy, but some are born in noble families while others can only be born in the thatched huts of beggars. Is this fair? Who do you ask for fairness from? Some are born smart and wise, while others are born stupid. Who do you ask for fairness from? In these hundreds of thousands of years, more than billions of innocent people have died in the hands of experts. Who do these people want to ask for fairness from? Xiao Qinyu burst into laughter. Now my army is coming with an unstoppable momentum. Their strength is dozens of times more than yours. How can there be any fairness in a battle of life and death? Li Chuanbua trembled all over. Good. Since that's the case, then why do I still pursue fairness? Since I'm going to destroy my family and clan no matter what, I'll just wait and see. The reason why Li Chuanbua shouted that it was unfair earlier was actually because of Mo Tianji's instructions. The purpose of Li Chuanbua's act was naturally to numb the enemy, so that they wouldn't see through his true intentions. However, Xiao Qinyu's talk of fairness made Li Chuanbua's heart as cold as dead ashes. Under everyone's watchful eyes, the 8 troops of the Allied forces had already arrived in front of the Li clan's formation. On the top of the mountain, Mo Tianji stood with his hands behind his back. His expression was calm and emotionless as he watched the ant-like crowd below approach. The conversation between Li Chuanbua and Xiao Qinyu reverberated in his ears, but it was as if he didn't hear a single word. It was only when Li Chuanbo finished his last sentence that Mo Tianji's lips curled into a cold smile. He murmured, "That's right. How can there be true fairness in this world? Diwu Qingru, you have never thought of fairness. I, Mo Tianji, have never thought of it either. Since all of you yearn for unfairness, and intend to achieve things through unfairness, then I'll give you unfairness." Chu Luo was a little puzzled. She asked, "Big brother Mo, I see that the other party is fully prepared. Aren't those people on our side sending themselves to their deaths? How are you going to give them unfairness?" Mo Tianji's lips curled into a cold smile. He looked down without blinking. He said, "They're not sending themselves to their deaths. Their purpose in coming here is only to perish together with us. This formation is an extremely extravagant bait. It's also an extremely realistic bait. And Diwu Qingru has already swallowed this bait. According to fairness, it's only fair that a 4th-grade martial saint dies at the hands of a 2nd-grade martial saint. After all, the other party has enjoyed more resources than him, and has gone through hundreds of years of cultivation more than him. But now it's all in one pot. What's the point of going to the netherworld together?" Mo Tianji looked at the 8 troops of the other party. As expected, they didn't attack the formation from the front. Instead, they entered through the 8 doors. The cold smile on his lips became even more cruel. "You didn't intend to fight with me in terms of formations. Actually, I didn't intend to either. Just as Xiao Qinyu said, your actual strength is dozens of times greater than ours. Why should I fight with you in terms of formations? Why talk about fairness? You wanted to destroy us easily. But you didn't expect that I wouldn't even give you the chance to do so, because there was no battle here at all. There were only explosions." Diwu Qingru looked at the 8 troops of the other party. They didn't forcefully break through the outer formation. Instead, they followed his instructions and entered the foggy land of the heaven-annihilating divine formation in an orderly manner. His eyes flashed with calmness. Once they entered, it was equivalent to the end of the battle. He seemed to have tasted the results of the first battle. It was just that it wasn't as sweet as he had imagined, because it seemed a little too simple. Mo Tianji was ultimately too young. His thinking was too simple. He and Chu Yang were heroes. They hoped to use the actions of heroes to demand of the enemy. However, they neglected the enemy's characteristics. I, Diwu Qingru, have never been a hero. I am a formidable person. A formidable person who would do anything for the sake of victory. If they still couldn't win with such a huge disparity in strength, or even if they couldn't win completely, then all the over 8,000 experts who had entered would die of shame, without waiting for others to say anything. After the 8,000 people in front of him were wiped out, the Li clan would only be left with high-end forces, the last of their forces. Then the follow-up plan. Just as Diwu Qingru started to consider the future battle situation, suddenly, Li Chuanbo's tragic voice came from the opposite side. Li Chuanbo's voice was like thunder in the sky, shaking the heavens and the earth. In this battle, their status was absolutely weak, but they ultimately played an unprecedentedly huge role. In the last 10 days, these people didn't go out. They just quietly stayed in their own homes to reunite with their loved ones. It didn't matter how rude, unreasonable, irritable, or heartless he was in the past, or if his wives and concubines were stolen or defrauded, or if he was originally kind and stood aloof from worldly affairs, or if he was originally a person who enjoyed the company of others. Everyone had miraculously behaved exactly the same in these 10 days. They just waited quietly. They didn't practice martial arts, didn't drink, didn't do anything. They just watched and accompanied their family members tenderly and reluctantly. They did those trivial things with them that they used to disdain, and talked about those family affairs. Even if they were usually irritable, they had never been so quiet in these 10 days. Li Hong's wife was the daughter of the head of the Li clan's enemy force. He was the one who killed his wife's entire family. But because he coveted his wife's beauty, he snatched her back and forced her to be his wife. The couple spent their lives in a cold war. But in these 10 days, Li Hong just quietly accompanied his wife, smiling gently. Every day, he cooked for the whole family with his clumsy culinary skills. When someone complained that the food was bad, he chuckled. Every night, He actually washed his wife's feet very carefully and gently. It was just that he still didn't say a word of apology. What happened back then wasn't something that could be resolved with just a word of apology. He just expressed his final feelings. Li Qingyun, this collateral descendant of the Li clan, naturally didn't have high cultivation achievements due to his poor aptitude. Usually, he would complain from time to time that the clan didn't give him any resources. He could be said to be the biggest thorn in the Li clan, the most difficult troublemaker to deal with. Even Li Wubua and the others would feel a headache whenever they saw him. But in these 10 days, the thing that this troublemaker did the most was kowtow. He kowtowed to his ancestors. My surname is Li. Li Qinggong, who was less than 40 years old this year, was already a 4th-grade martial saint. He had always felt that he was a genius, a rare genius. His usual personality was naturally arrogant and domineering. He was even more domineering in the clan, and had bullied many people. But in these 10 days, he greeted everyone he met with a smile. His attitude was almost humble, as he sincerely begged for others' forgiveness. As long as the other party said, "It's all right now," or "I forgive you," he would immediately be full of smiles. Before he died, all his debts had to be cleared. Lian had always been the most arrogant and unruly. Because his father tried to discipline him, he once got into a fight with his father, and eventually broke his father's arm. But in these 10 days, the thing that he did the most was to massage his old father's broken arm, and his whole body. In the morning and at night, he would greet his father in the morning and at night. In the afternoon, he would help his father out for a walk. His old father was old, and his nose was flowing. He would often wipe his nose on Lian when he tilted his head. Lian smiled gently, and used his white robe to wipe his father's nose. He even lowered his head, and tasted his old father's nose with his tongue, when no one else could see. At that moment his eyes were filled with tears. His father raised him. He still remembered that his father was as strong as a mountain when he was young. Now, he didn't even know how to wipe his own nose. But he actually didn't pay attention to it, and even broke his father's arm. How unfilial. How utterly devoid of conscience. There was no need to apologize. There was only action. I was wrong, but I don't have time. If there is a next life, I still want to be your son to make up for the mistakes in this life. There were many more. There were also some young men who had just gotten married. The young couple was inseparable for 10 days. This situation lasted until the night of the first day. These 8,000 people gathered together in the ancestral hall of the Li clan. Without a word, they knelt down and kowtowed silently. That kind of scene was shocking, heartbreaking and tearful. However, not a single one of the 8,000 people cried. There was only determination and tenacity. After 3 kowtows they walked out proudly. The time for the final battle had arrived. Not a single one of the 8,000 people was missing. All of them appeared and lined up neatly, their expressions calm. Behind them, the doors of the 8,000 families were wide open. The families leaned against the doors and looked at each other, sending each other off with red makeup. Tears streamed down their faces silently. However, none of the 8,000 people turned back. The brothers of the Li clan, together in death, under the bows of their ancestors. From the first-generation clans Li Chuanbua, the 8,000 people ended their lives in the most shocking way possible. They turned into dust just like that. Together with the 8,000 enemies who were much, much stronger than them, they turned into smoke at the same time, and turned into a loud explosion. At the end of an instant they turned into smoke. The love and hatred of the past, the lofty aspirations of the past, the sins of the past, everything became a thing of the past. Li Chuanbua straightened up, tears streaming down his face. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.